Today's guest is someone who has had a profound impact on my own dance journey. Gary Jobst has been a coach, mentor, and friend, and I've benefited greatly from his knowledge, guidance, and encouragement over the years. Many know Gary as a champion in both the West Coast Swing and UCWDC country dance worlds. But beyond the titles, he has spent decades helping dancers grow and strengthening the communities around them. Welcome to After the Last Song, where we get to know the people behind the dance shoes, the accomplishments, and the communities they help create. With 35 plus years of teaching, dancing, and judging experience in West Coast Swing, country two-step, and nightclub two-step, Gary has been doing this for a little while. He is one of only 13 platinum certified WSDC chief judges in the world. He is a two-time Open Swing Dance Champion, a UCWDC Teams World Champion, a living legend, California Swing Dance Hall of Fame inductee, a co-founder of Charlotte Westie Fest, West Orlando Westies, and GPDIA Judges Certification Program, which is no longer active. But needless to say, Gary has done quite a lot in this community. Gary, thank you for joining me. Welcome to After the Last Song. So I've already pre-recorded some things, so including what you just sent me. So I'll play those afterwards.
Okay.
Well, I figured I had a little time, so why not?
Yeah, exactly.
So I wanted to go ahead and jump right into the questions.
Okay.
You good with that?
Absolutely.
So, why don't you just tell me a little bit about why you're in a car right now? Like, where are you at? You just left the dance event. So tell everybody about that.
Well, I just left Orange Blossom Special here in Orlando, and then basically went from there to home to drop off all my stuff from the weekend, and then went to another local dance. And that was a country kind of party. And then now I'm actually sitting at the studio ready to go into a fusion party. So it's kind of it's a Sunday afternoon. I'm actually home, and because the Orange Blossom ended a little earlier, I was able to kind of slip out, and I just decided to go check out a couple other things that I haven't necessarily had a chance to do lately.
That's great. Well, but Orlando's only going to keep you for a little while longer. You want to tell us a little bit about your plans here in the near future?
Yes, I will be relocating to the Panhandle of Florida, which I guess you can say that my center point of work focus is going to be the Destin area. And it's really great up there in that area. I've been up there a lot and traveled through the area, and I love that it has this really cool kind of beach vibe, but also has southern charm. So it's not something that's new for me, but I just I'm ready for a change, and kind of decided on Destin because of kind of geographic layout of existing communities that I want to try to be able to support, as well as kind of strengthen the width of the community. So now there's already established West Coast Swing stuff going on in Mobile and in Pensacola, and about 45 minutes or so from there is Destin. So I figured that'd be nice, and maybe we can even get some folks from like Tallahassee to come over and say hi every once in a while.
Yeah. So are you intending on trying to grow something in Destin, like a new
Yes.
community, or just support existing?
Well, I don't know. I don't know a lot about it yet. I know there is some people that up there that do dance on a regular, or that try to get into and to do that hour drive to go dancing. So I know that there is a group of people that's a bit spread out in that community as well, and hopefully that will help kind of bring some of those back together. Other than that, I'll be growing a community. I just I don't want to necessarily assume that there's something there that's strong to tap into, because there's no weekly dances right there. But I know that there's a lot of people there that do dance from a variety of areas, including country and obviously West Coast Swing. And I know a lot of local pros up there that either currently do or previously did a lot of teaching up in the area. have said that they'll kind of help me get a little bit of exposure even to their group and their former students and their groups that they have up there. So, and I'll be filling in for Justin every once in a while. He's already said that he's looking forward to taking a vacation, and the same
I
thing.
bet he is.
I might end up even popping all the way over to Mobile to cover for Janie. So, who knows?
That's great. She was actually my last interview.
Oh, okay,
So
cool.
she was telling me about the mob.
Yes, the mob. Yeah, she's got the mob, and I've got the wow. Um,
You've got the wow.
yeah, Orlando.
That's awesome. So let's go ahead and dive in a little bit into your early years. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
So your first question is, what first drew you to partner dancing?
Well, I was 21 and single and living in Southern California on a military base. So
That'll do
probably
it.
the obvious was the girls.
The girls. You were a little
You know,
awkward.
well, yeah, that definitely. And on top of that, it was kind of one of those really interesting things because back in the 80s, it's kind of scary, but yes, in the 80s, which is when I first got started, I was in the Navy. I was stationed in San Diego, and they let's put it this way: the military wasn't treated as well as it is now. It wasn't as much of a positive thing. I love the fact that that's changed, but back then, if you lived in a military town, it wasn't necessarily a great way to meet people. Uh, you kind of got scared away a little bit, like the officer and a gentleman kind of thing, where the locals really kind of tried to keep you away from the girls. So, and then finding country western dancing, it was like that was the first place I went to, and my brother had introduced me to the group because he was already there and dancing. And I mean, long story short was, um, I was actually transferring to San Diego from San Francisco, literally to put a timeline on it. I was home on leave in between duty stations when the big earthquake hit San Francisco.
Ooh.
So that's exactly, and the ship that I was on up there literally went over and plugged in and sort of helped power the city. So they were on the island in the area where the bridge fell down. So my ship, I wouldn't have been able to leave because the bridges were shut down. So it's a little bit crazy if I was still there, but that's
Yeah,
the
that does
timeline.
sound insane.
That's always when I can't remember when it was exactly that I started. I just go back to that. It's like, when was that again? And that's kind of helps me.
Your major
Um,
timeline. It's like, I'm going to
yeah,
Google that right now.
and I literally went out with my brother and one night at home and back in Phoenix, and it took me to a bar, and I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And he's like, don't worry about it. He said, they'll teach you, and that's literally what happened that night. I was sitting at
Did
the
he
bar,
pass you a beer and say, here, have a
the
beer?
and the girls would come over and say, would you like to dance? And I'm like, I don't know how. And it's like, that's okay, I'll show you. And that was my first introduction to it. And that was so different than Southern California and going to the standard nightclubs and going freestyle dancing. And it was like, oh wow, this is kind of cool. So then I went to San Diego, and I ended up. My brother had told his. I mean, really, another because it's a little bit about the stories and the history. So it's kind of funny. I walked into the bar that I was told to go to. I walked in on the night I was told to be there, and I went over to the left and sat down. And there's a bar in the middle, and the dance floor was on the right. And about halfway into my first beer, guy walks up and taps me on my shoulder, and he says, "Are you Gary?" And I said, "Yeah." They said, "You're Robert's brother, right?" I said, "Yes." And this guy's name was Eric, who was my brother's best friend. And he's like, "You're on the wrong side of the bar." I'm like, "Okay, I didn't know there was a right side of the bar. The wrong side of the bar is where the drinkers are. The dancers were on the other side of the bar." So he brings me over to where all the dancers were and introduces me to everybody, including the mother and daughter teaching team that taught all over town at that point in time. And then I think it was about, I got to the point where I was going out dancing 6 nights a week. And there wasn't even, this was not even doing West Coast Swing. West Coast Swing was not part of country yet at all. Um, and so it was kind of one of those things. The next thing you know, I'm dancing 6 days a week. Started taking lessons from Michael Kim and beginning West Coast Swing a little while later.
He
And
was
I
up in
about six,
California, wasn't he?
yeah, he was in Southern California, San Diego. And that's and basically at that point, then I guess it was about 3 to 4 months later, I started dating the daughter of the mother-daughter dance teaching team. So very quickly became the assistant and the person that was there for demos. And next thing you know, I started to teach. And then next thing you know, my last duty station, my first country UCWDC partner was Pam Ford, who now lives up in Prescott, Arizona. And I've had a few others, but I ended up stopping doing that in 1996. Made it up to Division One showcase, so in couple stuff. And anyway, so that's kind of my. I ended up my last duty station in the Navy was in Long Beach, and I went up there and I got connected with the Midnight Cowboys and with the West Coast swing scene, and the rest was just kind of history as far as that was concerned. So a few steps later, I ended up switching totally over to swing.
So when did that happen for you? Like when you made that transition, or when did you become aware of West Coast swing?
The first time I became aware of West Coast swing was when I saw Tom Maddox show up at one of our events down or one of our I might have done a weekend workshop or something in San Diego. And then just after that, I went to a local event, and it was the first time we had a country event in San Diego, but it was not what Paradise, which is what became the event that continued. Tom Maddox came down from Los Angeles and did one time an event in San Diego, and that was the first time I'd ever gone to a country western dance event or the full weekend of the event, and it was awesome. I mean, I thought it was just so cool. I had no idea what I was doing. Um, but I realized that it was just a lot of fun. I got to watch like Division One showcase at the time, and it was crazy fun to watch. Um, yeah, so um, the transition wise, well, so yeah, the question was when I first saw West Coast Swing. Um, I started to see it a lot more because it started to kind of creep in because I started going to events, primarily country events around the southeast or southwest U.S. And if you did anything in Los Angeles or Palm Springs at the time, you were doing Tom Maddox events, and Tom Maddox was a West Coast swing dancer who also did
Yeah.
country stuff. He worked at a big country bar and taught incredible social dance teacher. And the one thing about him that was so amazing, besides being an absolute a party organizer beyond anyone's belief, um, was he was so great at teaching social dancing, not competitive dancing. When his own daughter wanted to start competing, he sent her to Phil Adams because he's like, I don't
Oh,
teach competition stuff. I'm just teaching you how to social dance and have an interaction with people and have fun. And that's what he taught people, and he was amazing at it. And that's kind of where I got my attitude from as far as how to teach group lessons, trying to keep it fun, crack jokes, and just
keep
have
it
a good time
light.
with it. Yeah. Well, learn a lot. But at the same time, sometimes I get too far into it. So it's not a good thing or not a bad thing for me to kind of get off on a sidetrack occasionally. But anyway, like I'm doing right now.
Fine. So I guess we're on to our third question, our second official question.
Okay.
Sorry, I had a side quest.
Right.
So, yeah,
Sidebar.
our next question is, did you ever imagine dance would become such a significant part of your life?
God, no, not even close. I mean, I was in the Navy. I wasn't sure how long I was going to stay. I wasn't sure. I didn't really have the kind of confidence level. I was very much an introvert, very shy. The idea of getting on a microphone and talking to people I would have never even thought of doing it. Um, any type of conversation or engagement where I actually had to get other people's attention was never something that I thrived for or did in any way or wanted to. Had zero desire for it. And even when I started dancing, I still didn't have a desire for it. It was like, and then all of a sudden I found out that I was actually pretty good at it. And then all of a sudden I'd go to a bar and I'd never sit down because I'd be getting asked to dance all night long. And then kind of slowly fell into teaching. I did a long time of apprentice teaching where basically I was the body in the class and I would say things occasionally. Um, and would do sometimes line dance classes, and then after I got out of the Navy in '93, I was already teaching, but not a lot. And then crazy thing happened. The lady that I was co-teaching for, a new bar opened up in town, and she decided to go over to the new opportunity. And I approached the manager of Denim and Diamonds in Huntington Beach and asked him if I could stay there and take over the classes. And he took a chance on me because I'd never taught group classes at a bar. And this was in the heyday of country in the early '90s. Um, and he, before Achy Breaky, by the way. Um, And next thing you know, the classes went from 10 to 12 couples every Monday night to 50, 60 couples. The floor was packed. You couldn't move. And just
That's a
had,
great feeling.
yeah, it is. It's just great. And the fact that there were so many options that our group grew. I still have students and friends from those days that took classes from me. I have a friend of mine that just visited Florida from Montana or someplace up in the middle of nowhere that met his current wife at that same close place taking dance classes and stuff. So I still see that, which is really, really cool.
That's sweet. So at this point, you've taught thousands of people at different events, and
Oh yeah, I mean, I would be
yeah, your
guessing. I
reach
mean,
has been out there.
it's been, it would be in the hundred thousands. It has to be because I mean, I had workshop weekends. I did an event over in Sweden last year, and I think I had almost 400 people in my Thursday night warm up workshop. So you know, there's been big ones, and yeah, and definitely in the hundreds of thousands. I wouldn't say maybe, probably not in the millions, but definitely in the hundreds of thousands. Because it's been 30, almost 35 or 33 years of teaching.
It's been a while.
So 35 years. Yeah.
Well, you've been all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, I have. I've literally traveled and taught, you know, from St. Petersburg, Russia to New Zealand. So it's been really cool. I'm currently sitting at 49 states and 40 countries that I've been to.
Ooh, which states are you
So
still missing?
the only one I'm missing is or North Dakota.
Really?
Yep, that's it.
Well, we're gonna have to fix that.
Absolutely, that's the goal.
So who are some of the people who influenced your early journey and said, "Hey, go do this. It'll help you get on the right path."
Um, I think that the biggest thing for me that was a big impact is I didn't wait to be told. I asked. Um, I was willing to take a chance here and there, but I asked people. Like I remember I worked with Skippy Blair for probably 5 or 6 years, read on a consistent basis in her Downey studio, and I was kind of one of the kids because I was literally mid 20s, early 20s, still in the Navy, not making any money, and she wouldn't charge us. She wouldn't let me pay for the classes. Um,
Oh,
so, you know, it was the same thing for me and Mark Shifley, Mark the Marine. That is so, you know, he's been around forever. He's was one of my buddies at that point in time in the dance community up there. But Skippy had this thing that she said. I literally asked her the question. I said, "When will I know I'm ready to start teaching?" And or how will I know I'm ready to start teaching? And her answer was, "Oh, you'll be teaching long before then." It's like, okay, and it was absolutely the truth. It was absolutely the truth. It's like you're sitting there teaching, and all of a sudden, you just, okay, when did this happen? How did I all of a sudden become a teacher? And I think that she was very, very influential in that whole process. I've kind of always been the person, the type of individual that gathers as much information as I can together before I make the final decision. I'll reach out and ask people sometimes what they think about something, what their opinion is, but at the same time, I end up making the decision myself. I didn't ask anybody's opinion about moving up to Pensacola area, the Panhandle area. I talked to a couple of teachers up there before I made the full decision. But
hmm
I mean, I generally just do what kind of feels right for me as far as that's concerned. And some of them haven't been great. Others have been great for a little while, and they did their time and then faded. But um, I had Skippy is kind of one of that driving forces. I think a lot of training with Phil Adams, which, and this time in my life, I was making that transition to be a professional, even if it was a hobby job, um, where I was teaching enough and dancing enough. And it got to the point where the teaching was more than paying for the dancing. So all of a sudden I had to start looking at write-offs. And I remember the first time that I gave Phil Adams a 1099 for private lessons, he was not happy.
Oh, yeah,
But
I bet.
that was when I got to the point where I was doing so much traveling and so much teaching. Um, and then during that time frame, I also did the switch over to West Coast Swing, and that changed the direction of it. So I'd been teaching for probably, got 5-6 years. I managed to work my way up in West Coast Swing up to the champions level, and then I don't know if I'm getting ahead of us of ourselves here or not, but as far as
You're fine.
influential moments in my dance career would probably have been once when I ended up winning the U.S. Open, and all of a sudden that was the full switch, because October of '96 is the last time I competed in UCWDC. It's the San Diego in Division One, and then in 1997, so Thanksgiving in '97, I won the Open. So during that year, I kind of focused on West Coast Swing. I'd also moved to, I lived in Arizona at the time again. And then with my partner, we worked our butts off and ended up winning the Open. And then after that, bam,
So
we were,
different partner from country, right?
yes, yeah. Um, yeah. Um, I'm trying not to get ahead of ourselves just because I don't want this to kind of be all shoots, but we want to come back to that because there's actually a fun little part of the story on that, but that's connects further into our chain of thought here today. So,
That's true. But I mean, like, if we get ahead of ourselves, that's okay too. We just be like,
yeah.
oh, we already talked about that.
Yeah. I think I kind of made a big jump ahead there, but yeah. I mean, I started competing in West Coast Swing. Found a partner that I met literally probably at the night that I was teaching at home or in Huntington Beach, and we used to dance there and at the press box with Kenny Wetzel's group, and then the Swing Time Dance Studio and Dance Scene Dance Studio. Dance Scene is still around. Press box is still around. And Denim and Diamonds was in Huntington Beach. We used to have a lot. Just the dancing was great. And then we added a Wednesday night West Coast night. So we ended up having a huge night. I was teaching there on Mondays and Wednesdays, and then all of a sudden, showed up and the doors were locked. I walked in for
Oh,
class on a Monday night, and there was a chain around the door that said we are closed, period. And they basically just totally killed country and everything. The whole night was gone. And I sat there for the next 3 hours with a pad of paper, getting email addresses from people and phone numbers
right.
as they came in for the classes. So yeah, so that was it when it came to that, and luckily it wasn't something I was doing for a living.
Right.
I'd literally already found a job. I found a job from the dance floor when
Yeah.
I was in the Navy as I was teaching there at Denim and Diamonds, and I knew I was getting out of the Navy. I had decided that it wasn't the best place for me. Everything went no problems. It was just that's the day before social media, and I was really enjoying the dance scene so much. It felt like it was allowing me to open up and be more comfortable and enjoy my life a lot more. And the idea of them transferring me to a different place every 2 or 3 years was just like, well, that'll just destroy that entire thing. And literally, now, if it was with social media, you can find communities easy anywhere in the world. But that didn't happen back then. And so I just was like, you know what? I'm enjoying my life outside of the Navy, so it's time for me to get out. And I announced at my Wednesday night or my Monday night class, hey, I'm looking for a job. By the way, I got out of the Navy in a month from today. And I had somebody come up to me and hired me as his trainer. So I became a corporate trainer. And I didn't know the product. And he was like, I don't care. He said, you know how to teach. You can explain things in so many different ways. You have the patience for it. You have the demeanor for it. He said, yeah, I'm bringing you in as a corporate trainer. And I was like, oh, okay, that worked out. I was like, okay. All of a sudden, I went from being a Navy guy to being a corporate trainer, just like that, just like out of nowhere, it seemed to me. But it was a good fit, and then I took that into sales. So that's where my life totally changed. As I became a teacher as a salesman and did very, very well. Ended up moving all over the years, became a regional vice president with MetLife covering 4 states. Um, and then the crash happened, but that's way long down the line. But it was dancing literally led me to a career, and even now, where I do more director of operations stuff. A lot of seeing how all the pieces come together also is something that I developed as a chief judge. And also my abilities to see things from that level helped me as a chief judge. So there's all kind of weird stuff that have clicked together over the many, many years.
So, ending our early years conversation, I've got one last question. What was the biggest lesson you learned as a young competitor?
I'll give you two answers. So number one, my first lesson, I was at a country western dance event. I was a smoker at the time. Um, it was the first time I'd been to a full on weekend event. I remember walking outside of the lobby of the hotel, outside the lobby of the ballroom, and I'm sitting out there and I'm having a cigarette, and I'm looking towards where the event was. So there's a hallway with glass windows all the way down the hallway, and then behind that was the ballroom that everybody's competing in. And I see these two couples, both of them in full costume, practicing a move. One of them is obviously showing the other person how to do a particular move and helping them to get more comfortable and more comfortable and more comfortable with it. And they're just like literally help them out like 10 or 15 minutes. And I'm out there just watching it. I had probably way too many cigarettes just watching them. But then I go back inside and I literally see them on the dance floor competing against each other with the move that he was helping him to fix. And I'm like, what kind of craziness is this that you're actually helping your competitor at the contest? Not like helping them train, not helping them afterwards, but literally right before you're going to go out there and compete against them. And that was kind of what gave me this kind of realization. Like, that's because they're not competing with anybody. Or competing against anybody. They're competing with everybody. So you're out there with the folks, and it's more of like a family, a little bit of a rivalry kind of thing, more than it is, knockout, drag out kind of fight out there. It was much more camaraderie and a community like that I was like, wow, this is cool. And so that really made me want to kind of become involved with it.
That's a great
Yeah.
way to look at competition anyway.
Yes. Oh, definitely. Well, and that, I mean, and there is much more of that. And this was like, mind you, this is way before like Jack and Jill's got popular and anything like that happened. It was UCWDC, country western competition. So it was much different than it is now. And most of the folks that did it were coming in out of bars. We all learned how to dance at bars, and then we took it to the competition floor. But yeah,
Now
so that
you're
was
lucky
probably
if you can
the
find a bar
overall.
like that.
Yes, you are. And now, what I need you to do to help me get my mind back on track. By the way, I probably should mention this. I have pretty obvious ADHD, so I get sidetracked pretty easily. And that's like I mentioned, as far as my talents, my unexpected and unrealized talent is my ADHD superpower is the ability to hyperfocus, but it's also seeing how little pieces come together and recognizing patterns. So I have a tendency to be able to fix things quickly because I notice them faster. But it also kind of makes me go down different channels and different sidebars. So if I need a rewind, it's because I want to be reset as to what I thought about. So ask your question again. That led me to my first example, and I'm going to remember then what the second one was.
So the question was, what was the biggest lesson you learned as a young competitor?
All right, as a young competitor, and the reason why I was kind of like wanting to rewind that on different levels of it is because um, as I got into competition I probably towards my early to mid 20s, probably it was like 24, 25, 26 is when I first started. So that means that literally 3 or 4 years later, so it was 1997 was when I won the US Open. So it was not a very long period of time. Um, and 97 is when I turned 30. So it was like between 25, 24, and 30 was that time frame that was really huge for me. So the big thing for me that really makes me and drives me in how I teach and how I work and coach with people is how important the fundamentals were. And it sounds like very teacher-esque, but there's a really significant connection to this because I mentioned earlier how I did my last competition in country in 1996, and then in 1997 I won the U.S. Open. So the other thing about 1996 was I placed 26th out of 28, I believe it was, in Classic. So almost last. And probably very well deserved, okay? But I was already also competing in the Champions Division but I was kind of somebody who, every once in a while had some luck, but I wasn't at anywhere near anywhere on that top rung. Um, but I ended up getting a new partner, and then really, this was somebody who was strongly connected with Skippy and her techniques and stuff. Which this whole thing kind of brought me back to that focus again. And for an entire year, along with the routine, worked on two things, and that was posture and basics. Mind you, while we're putting together a showcase routine for the US Open, also working on those two things to try to get my foundation and fundamentals stronger, which in the end took my dancing up so many steps, so many levels. Um, so literally, that was what I focused my energy on for almost a whole year as an individual dancer. And then in 1997, Kate Ford and I won the showcase division at the Open. And also, I got most improved male swing dancer in the nation. And I was already competing at champions level.
Yeah.
So to me, that was a huge jump. And literally after that was when kind of I had this streak, because I had what I called the bridesmaid year from hell that started in October of '96 and lasted until October of '97. I placed second or fourth in every contest I danced in for over almost a year and a half. Actually, it went all the way back to Albuquerque. So, and it was really funny that, again, well deserved. My partner and I from '96 danced at Albuquerque in a swing contest at a country event, and we got beat by Robert and Lorraine. Obviously, okay, absolutely fine with that. But that's what started. We got second place. That's what started this year and a half of second places. And I'm sitting there going, I'm coming into the U.S. Open and I'm going to play second again. It's like that's, and then Halloween weekend at Paradise in San Diego, October, a month before the Open. Mind you, there was no warm up events to the Open then. It was like there was nothing until the Open. I'm at Paradise. I'm dancing in a Jack and Jill contest, and I draw Lorraine Valdovi, and we beat Robert. And I don't remember who he was dancing with at that point in time, but we got first place. And I literally was like emotional because I felt like a load was lifted off my shoulders. So I'm like, holy crap, I might actually have a chance to win the Open. I thought I was cursed as a second place regardless. And I held that weight lifted off my shoulder. And that last month, the practicing and everything else felt so much more positive and energetic. My mind was in the right place. And then we ended up going out and winning. So the idea of number one of realizing you can have some really kind of, and of course you say struggles, yeah, first world problems. I took second. Oh, so poor Gary took second place. Yeah, well, if you get second place after a while, you're kind of like going, "Am I ever going to actually cross that line?" And I did, and
So
that's pretty
psychology,
much what
it's really a
changed it.
mindset.
It can be, yeah. I mean, and it's almost like you don't go out there expecting it, so you always walk on the floor hoping for the best. But then just things seem to sometimes happen because you could have literally. That's the one thing that I learned also about dancing is you can give that your best possible dance, but it's still not going to be good enough because somebody else could give their best, and at the same time, somebody else giving their worst could still be better than your best. There's a lot of examples of that in competition over the years.
That's the
But yeah,
truth.
it's that was the those are two things kind of like that were my big learned lessons that really did help me and made me wish that I'd gone back and reworked my fundamentals earlier in my career because I literally did it. Ended up doing it like 2 or 3 times as a dancer during the short period of time that I was doing it. Yeah, so that was pretty much it.
Well, thank you for sharing. I'm going to
Oh,
move into the next section, the evolution of a dancer.
okay.
Um, I think we already covered the first question. So, looking back, what was a major turning point in your dance career? And I'm not saying jumping from country to West Coast. Let's just say this is what pushed you beyond where you were at. So maybe we just talked about that, but you might have
Yeah.
had another turning point.
Well, and I think about that as also so we kind of tend to lump together dance career as I mean, I'm probably one of those individuals that's been around the dance community the longest, but actually danced probably not as long. Even though I still dance and I still compete on occasion, and I mean, it's fun to say I've competed in the U.S. Open in my 20s, my 30s, and my 40s. You know, I hope, I doubt it's going to happen now because I'm literally 59. Hoping to be able to do it one more time before, before I turn 60. But I'd love to be able to say I've done the U.S. Open in 4 different decades of my life. And not very many people have been dancing for that long or stayed active, you know. So, but I didn't generally do anything except for now a lot of masters and an occasional champions division. But I stepped away from competition after a while, um, and started doing a lot more judging. And probably the biggest thing that happened for me that was a big change was, I think one of the first events that I ever was the chief judge at, was in Vegas, and it was how I ended up getting the job. Um, Without going into too much detail, there was some questions as far as how the scoring was being done, because back in those days, the judges would sit on one side of a like a long 6-foot table, and the chief judge would sit on the other side of the table with the tally sheet, and we would read them our scores for finals, and he would write it into the tally sheet. That was one way of doing the scoring. And for each judge, they would give you your scores for each of the divisions. They'd enter it in, they'd run the tally, and then they'd have the placement, and boom, now we go on to the next division. Same thing, the judges give the scores. And so that's how they did it. And I'm literally sitting there watching this individual who is a very, very seasoned and very prominent member of the West Coast swing community, also probably a generation or two past me. So they were like, I was in my 20s, maybe early 30s, and they were probably in their 50s, 60s at the time already. So for me to say anything at all was really difficult. And I said, excuse me, but I think you're doing the tallying wrong.
Oh.
And mind you, I had literally just done the training from Lance, Shermone, and Skippy. I had just been through that program, and I was doing a lot of judging at the time, and I was like, I felt like I had a good solid because the logic flow in my head made sense. So I connected to it really quickly. And then he's like, oh, yeah, kind of whatever. And I was like, and then, no, I said, I really do think you're not, I don't think you're doing it correctly. And the person sitting next to me, who was kind of in my same generation, said, he's right. We do believe you are doing it wrong. So I had somebody back me up. And then he listened to us and fixed it and realized that, yes, he was making an error in how he applied to one particular rule. I don't remember which one it was now. It's literally been, God, close to 30 plus years. And so I'm literally driving home on my cell phone back when you had roaming charges everywhere you went. I'm driving from Vegas, I think, back to LA, or back. Yeah, it
You
might have
got
been back.
signal there?
Yeah, it was very short, but I'm calling Skippy Blair and Annie Hirsch, going, I think I've just ruined my entire dance career. I'll never work again. I'll never get hired again. And they're like, I didn't get anything that could help at that moment, because it wasn't like they could instantly interact like we can now with everybody else that was there. As it turns out, at the end of the weekend, that individual tried to throw me under the bus to the event director, and the event director reached out to all the judges and asked them what happened, and they told them the truth. And I got hired as the chief judge the next year.
Oh, wow.
So that was the first time that I was the chief judge at an event, was after that event. And at that event where I was the chief judge, I was asked to come in and do the chief judging job for Phoenix 4th of July, which back in the 90s, that was, you think about it nowadays, there's a few events that have over 100 novice competitors in it. They had it back in the 90s, 100 plus novice, dancers. Not dancers, couples.
That was before we had reels where you can actually see
Right.
West Coast swing.
Yes, before all of that. So the event was known as the U.S. Open of Jack and Jill's at the time. And so they brought me in as the chief judge. And it was blown away. I was also, the event director was somebody who I knew from Phoenix, so they were a friend of mine, and then they saw what I was doing at that event and was, you know what, this could work. And they did, and they brought me in, and I ran the event on time. Carlito at one point complained about me being too military because everything ran on time that weekend.
He was so sweet.
And that was literally, I'm pretty sure, I'm trying to be hesitant and as kind of like vague on this part, just because before I've had to record this, I've said that as a fact, but I'm 100% of like you feel really confident about something until you like realize there's going to be a record of it. I
Yeah.
believe that was the first time the circle format was ever used. Um, and so before that, we would line you up, rotate partners, scatter, then come back into the row, do it again, scatter. So you'd spend half your time watching, looking for the contestants. And that's when it was like, and my analytical mind going, I need to find something more efficient than this. So we started using the circle, which is obviously is still out there
I
today.
need
Um,
sanity in the
yes.
chaos.
Um, the people that hated it the most were the videographers because they used fixed platform videos from the corner, so that's all that middle floor that was empty. So it took a lot
Oh,
of changes
yeah.
since then. We made a lot of adjustments, but it was yeah. So that was it, and that changed everything. Having being all of a sudden thrown into being a chief judge at what at the time was the largest social competitive event, where all of the contests there were no strictly swings. There was nothing but Jack and Jills, and it was the largest by far. Um, and that was what kind of changed my trajectory and made me into more of a judge and more of a chief judge. And ironically, that went started the very first step in that whole path was when I was told I took the idea of don't dress for the job you have, but dress for the job you want. I started to show up at dance events during the evenings in a sports coat. Next thing you know, I get asked to be a judge, and then I start wearing a suit. Next thing you know, I'm asked to be a chief judge. And now back in the day, the other judges would complain about me being in charge, but it wasn't because I wasn't a good person to work with. It was because I showed up in a suit and tie all the time. I showed up in a tuxedo on Friday and Saturday night. I was wearing a tux, and so that meant that the other judges had to step up what they were wearing.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, that was kind of fun for a while. It's kind of you go through those transitions, but that was probably the biggest thing that affected the trajectory of my dance career, and also kind of pushed me away from primarily a competitor position and became more of a judge. And I remember having fellow champions at the time going, they were so glad that I was sitting on the other side judging them. And I took it the right way, but I also realized how I could take it, which was they'd rather have me judging than dancing with them.
Well, yeah.
And I chose not to take that as the perspective. I took it
Yeah.
as that they respect me as a judge, and they like the fact that they don't question that I'm sitting in that chair judging them. And I was
You
like,
earned
okay,
it.
yeah, yeah. So that was where the big change came in, and that's where I kind of found a position where I could bring as much as possible to the community, and not and stand up for the competitors as well, but also have judging panels who knew that I would have their back if they gave me if they had something happened. I need to know what happened and why. Give me a good solid reason for it, and I will have your corner 100%. I used to tell them judge the competitors on what they put on the floor today. I don't care what they've done, where they've gone, how many rings they have, how much they've traveled the world. Judge them on what they put on the floor today. And especially when you're judging champions, that's something that you have to remind them of. And that was well received, and that's still how I feel today.
I love that you keep everybody accountable.
I try.
So my next question is, what kept you motivated through the highs and lows?
I think so. I'm gonna go at that from two different perspectives. One of them is as a dancer. Um, I always, and as a dancer slash competitor, I always would try to allow myself. I referred to it as goals, aspirations, and dreams. So your goal should be something that you find attainable as far as a stretch where you're like, okay, I'm going to push myself to that. That's something that I should get at a minimum. Your aspiration is something that's a little bit stronger than that. You'll be okay. It's like that saying, shoot for the stars, you land in the clouds or whatever the heck it is. But you don't get all the way to the top, but you're close and you're okay. You did the work. And the dream
Hmm.
was to actually the ultimate dream. I remember being at Disneyland Hotel at the pit during Country Western World Championships we did a sneak up or a sneak in late night dance at the ballroom where the West Coast Swing Open used to be, because the country event was in the other ballroom, and we went in there with a boombox and we were playing music, and that was our late night West Coast. And during that whole party, where I'm sitting there going from cassette to cassette, playing different songs, um, I laid down in the middle of the floor, the middle of the U.S. Open dance floor, because it was a permanent floor there at the Disney Hotel, and basically kind of closed my eyes and visualized, put in my head that winning the U.S. Open. And so the goal going into the U.S. Open as a dancer was to make finals in the showcase division. And second, the aspiration was to place, and third was to win. The dream was, no, I'm sorry. Let me back that up. My goal was to place. My aspiration was to win. The dream was to also win the most improved. So back then they had an award that was called the Gene Cachonis Award for the most improved male swing dancer in the nation, which that to me was very individual, and where the other part was all partner. So for me, with the work that I'd done over that year, that was the goal going into it. So I wanted to place. The aspiration was to win, and then the dream was to win and to do that. And then, so when both of those happened, it was, I mean, there's a picture of me, and maybe I'll give it to you so you can pop it in here right now. So I'll give it back to you, give it to you so you can throw that little corner shot, how they do that in these things.
Yeah.
And I'll send it to you, and you can see a picture of me and Kate where we were standing with my arm wrapped around her, and I am absolutely bawling.
Oh.
At the U.S. Open, in costume, at awards, I'm bawling like crazy. And so that would be a fun one for you to look at, and for your viewers to see. But
Yeah,
that kind
absolutely.
of is I think what keeps you going, and allowing yourself to, as a dancer, if you're not introspective, I don't think that you're ever going to go very far. You have to go, all right, what is it that's holding me back right now? Do I feel like I want to get to the next step? One of the things that I'm going to kind of try to get out of my emotional state right now to be able to stay focused on this, because I kind of went there for a second, remembering that moment. But as we go through the dance thing, the thing that drives me the most crazy about our dance, on a competitive individual perspective, not a format or dance style or anything, is if you consider our dance to be a sport, and you compare it to other amateur type sports or even semi-professional type sports, if you like to play tennis, do you quit playing because you're never going to play Wimbledon? If you enjoy playing golf, do you stop playing golf because you can't win the US Open or the British Open or, the PGA championships? I know people who play softball for fun, but I also people that play senior World Series stuff where they literally get rings and everything in a senior level. But you don't stop just because you're not going to be able to play at that top level.
Yeah.
But people in West Coast Swing do. They quit dancing. They're like, I'm not going to get past All Stars. I'm not going to get past advanced. So what's the point? The point is you're supposed to be having fun. That's the first thing. If you're not enjoying it, that's fine. But you don't also just compete. Doesn't have to be the only thing. And that's kind of, I'm at that point right now as a dancer where I'll go out there and I'll dance in champions every once in a while. I'll make the donation, but I still want to be out there having fun, even though I'm literally drawing people in some cases a third of my age. Some of the partners that I'll draw out there, and I know they don't want to dance with grandpa, even though I'm not a grandpa yet. So I don't want to be
Not for a
grandpa
while.
G. No, no. But it's I think that's the frustrating thing, is that people get so much into the competition side of things that they lose the reality of it, of, hey, are you improving or do you want to improve? Because that same thing happens from the outside where people are like, well, they haven't worked on their dancing, they just come social dancing and they don't work on this, they don't try to get better. It's like, so what? What's wrong with
They're
that?
having fun.
They want to stay where they are. You know what? I could tell you right now that if I had to go back in time and I could lock myself in as a level of dancer, I would lock myself in as an intermediate dancer. Because I was my life was so much more fun and relaxed, and I was so less critical of everybody. I wasn't critiquing everybody else because I still didn't think I was good enough to really feel like I could be judgmental of everybody. So anytime I had a good dance, I absolutely had a blast. And you are comfortable with your ignorance at that point in time. You don't know what you don't know, and so I just think that that's kind of overdone. And again, I went on a little sidebar there, but um,
No, you're fine. You went right into like the next section.
so the other thing professionally. Okay, so that was my dance kind of thing, and that kind of transition moved me out of the primarily being a dancer instead of being more of a judge, which then ended up becoming a MC and a occasional DJ, and during the transition from country to swing, I became the swing room DJ at country events and did all that kind of stuff. And but then as a judge, um, I think one of the things that really helped me was when my job relocated me from Irvine, California um, to Little Rock, Arkansas. I made a commitment, even though I also had a very, very young child, Brandon, who right now is literally just started sophomore year in college. Scary. Yeah, that he's that old. Um, and I basically said I knew that the position that I held in the dance community as a chief judge primarily, if I that's not a job where you take a couple of years off and are allowed to step back in right where you left off. You have to. Events don't change their chief judge very often.
It's
So when
true.
they change it, they keep it. Um, so we used to have a very small group of chief judges, and it was kind of like this unspoken rule that if you had to take a year off for some type of conflict, then you would clear with the event directing team and then talk to that individual pro, say this is your year, but it's still I'm coming back as the chief judge next year. So it's still kind of quote unquote my contract, which obviously the event can change their mind at any time. But and that person was stepping in for a year. After that year, if they needed you again, 2 years after 2 years is mine. I'm no longer the fill-in. Now I'm actually the chief judge. And then it kind of we went that, and we would literally, if we knew as a chief judge that somebody else was the chief judge last year, and they were asking us, we would say, hey, let me check a couple things. I'll let you know, and we would reach out to the other chief judge, and talk to them about what happened. And sometimes you found out the reasons why. Sometimes you didn't. Sometimes you're glad you found out the reasons why because you didn't want to step into that mess. But it wasn't something, luckily, that happened very often. But you had that kind of a honor system within the chief judges where we kind of helped each other out like that. So, but I knew that if I stepped away for a newborn moving to Arkansas, my chief judging career was basically going to be gone. And so I decided that I was going to continue, even if they ended up being as a break even or loss, especially when you're traveling with a significant other and a kid, going to events. And at the time, we were still doing a lot of teaching too, so that helped when we did travel. So I was able to accept some contracts that weren't really great, but kept me in the mix until I was able to be much more flexible to keep doing more again. So as I held that kind of down low of moving across the country, that's what was difficult to keep it going, and then I picked things up again. So as a professional, I think sometimes you have to realize that it's not a bad idea to have a regular job because the dance business is not great. It's not a great money making business, but it is a fun sideline opportunity. Very few people make a really good living in dance, especially in West Coast Swing. If they're doing ballroom and all the other competitions and stuff that they do, then you can actually make a decent amount of income, or even in country now with all the competitive sides and the different options that we have here in country.
Yeah.
But West Coast Swing, there's not. And now there's so many events that, you know, back in the day, quote unquote, there was nobody that made a living teaching unless they
Yeah.
owned a studio. They owned a studio, yes, but no independent teachers could make a living traveling and teaching like that. Not even close. So yeah, that's what kind of kept me going was I wanted to stay involved even though I wasn't currently an active dancer. And then every once in a while I get the bug and decide to come back on the floor again, and usually didn't kind of continue. But yeah, so that's kind of it on that.
Oh, what was it? I think you had a goal. I happened to be with you up at, what was it? UCWDC Worlds in Nashville. And you're like, oh, there's a Jack and Jill competition. Masters, my first year of Masters. I'm going to go compete. That was fun.
I was
And I
literally
think
when
you
I
drew one
was
of my students.
yeah yeah. I want to come back. Yeah, definitely need to come back to that because here's the funniest thing. So leading into that, every time I'd be at an event where there'd be masters lined up, I'd be like walking by, going, "Go, old people!" And they'd all look at me like, "Hey," I'm like, "I'm gonna be there next month." I was so and still am. It was so much fun because it's literally I went to Jack and Jillorama because it was the first event after I turned 30 or turned 50. I made sure I went to that year, and then obviously other things happened too. But that was the year, and because I wanted to go for the first time, I thought I would actually have a chance at getting the Carlito Award, which was dancing in every dang division. And the one thing that actually made it so I really didn't have much of a chance is I can't follow. I can't follow physically because I have bad shoulders, so I don't trust, especially with my height. I don't
Oh
trust
yeah.
dancing in a Jack and Jill as a follower, so I just can't. I couldn't do that. So I did everything else. So every division, every contest I could dance in, I did that weekend, um, and had a great time. And then 4th of July, I went there, and that was when I won my first Masters and got another. That's the first time I had ever won at Phoenix, and I went there for decades because part of the things that I joked around about was the reason why I agreed so readily to become the chief judge was because I sucked there in competition. I danced at that event for freaking 15 years, and I think I placed twice. It was one of my worst events for results. So I was really willing to just go, yeah, I'm okay with that. We can go ahead and stop competing there. Um,
Moving into the judging solidly.
yes, yeah. The Masters thing was really fun, and I think what I don't know that you probably do know, but it's just kind of didn't trigger. But I was her first private lesson, other than you.
Oh yeah.
So she had never taken a West Coast swing private lesson with a traveling or regional or champion pro, quote unquote. Okay.
To be fair, you were
And
coming to Huntsville quite a lot at the time.
yeah, because I was working with who?
Me and Travis.
And
Oh gosh,
oh,
who
that was
else were you
Huntsville.
working with?
No, it's Huntsville. I was also going over to Murfreesboro a lot at that time too,
Yeah,
because that was
Brooklyn.
when I
Yeah.
was working with Brooklyn. Yeah, yeah, that was before she turned 18 and started traveling more. Yeah, so yeah, I mean that was when I did kind of my golf course tour, and that's what kind of actually initiated my connection into the Panhandle area and falling in love with that area,
Let's
which
not
I now I'm
admit how
moving.
long ago that was.
Yeah, we don't have to,
Yeah, it was a
but it
while
wasn't
ago.
not as long as yeah, it was at least in this century.
It was. It was in the
Yeah,
century.
um, and I wanted to mention something else, but I kind of lost my train of thought about that. Where
Sorry.
were we?
Oh, you were talking about her private. You were her first pro.
Oh yes, yes. Um, she came up to me like a year or so later and told me that she was so frustrated with her dancing that at that time that weekend was going to be her last time competing, and
Mhm.
she was going to quit competition and stop going to events. And a year and a half later, I saw her at Worlds again, or maybe 2 years later, or it might have even been at Orange Blossom or something. I don't remember what event it was. And she was on the floor competing in UCWDC. So it's not only did she not stop competing, she actually ended up going into country competition and started doing
Yep.
routines with the pro and doing pro am, and that was so fun to see. Because mind you, so this is the funniest thing because there's a lot to do with that, but this is one of those fun stories. So one of the things you asked me was about having some fun stories or different types of stories. That
Hmm.
situation was so much fun because me being the person that has so much other dance stuff that I've done, running competitions, chief judging, everything else, I have a tendency to see how things kind of fit together and what's going to happen. And I knew that there were 5 couples in the Masters division, and they were announcing through 5th place. So mind you, she was pulled in at the last second. She was a
Hmm.
newcomer, Masters
Yeah.
newcomer. She was pulled in at the last second
She was freaked
because
out.
somebody didn't show up for finals, and then she got paired with me, and so she was a little bit scared, um, but smiled a lot, had fun. So at awards, I know they're announcing 5 placements. So I'm sitting here up in the top of the bleachers, and I'm watching her. I'm not watching the MC. I'm watching her,
Oh, I
just
didn't
because.
realize that. I was sitting there right next to you too.
Yep, she did not know. that everyone would be called out because they were calling through fifth and there were only 5 couples. So we were all going to get called out at some place. And so I'm watching her waiting for them to say our names. And they didn't say our name, didn't say our name, didn't say our name. All of a sudden, and of course, at that point in time, I knew that we had first place as soon as they announced second. And I'm watching her, and they announce it, and she's not paying any attention. She didn't hear it. And then all of a sudden, she's like, wait, what? Kind of somebody like shook her shoulder or something like that. And I'm watching her the whole time. Because of course that was the most thrilling part about the whole thing was how she reacted to it. And then she of course starts jumping and bouncing off the walls and everything else. She had no idea how to react to it because it was not something that she even thought about. There was so much fun watching her reaction over anything else.
Yeah, you kept her
Yeah,
dancing because she was ready
yeah,
to quit.
yeah, yeah. That was fun, and I loved hearing about that a couple years later that she still danced.
Yeah, she's the trip. So, I'm gonna move into kind of like the leadership and mentorship section since we've kind of like breezed through a lot of these questions. Um, in your mind, what makes someone coachable that you want to come back and coach again? Like this person, I want to put effort into this person, into their dance, other than them wanting to hire you, you know?
Yeah. Oh, you mean other than their checks not bouncing?
Right, that does help things.
Well, I mean, I do. I honestly do think that because my mind immediately went to this on a two-pronged thing. So dancer and teacher or organizer, promoter kind of side of things. But I think as a teacher and a coach as a coaching the dance side of it, um, I think it's openness and or what the proper word is. I'm not somebody who likes to focus on a negative thing. I'm not somebody who likes to go, I don't care why it's not working. I don't care why you didn't get a chance to practice. I just want you to say, sorry, I didn't get to practice. Like, okay, ADHD. I don't need a long drawn out explanation for why you can't do this. Now, if it's a physical limitation in your dance is the reason you're not able to do this, tell me so we'll change it. We'll do something else. But um, I want someone who's going to put in the effort, and if they don't get there yet, they understand that it still requires continuous effort. Because there's that old, everybody always says that practice makes perfect, and that's not correct. Perfect practice makes perfect. Practice makes permanent. So no matter what you do, if it's not at the quality that you need it, you need to be the perfect practice is what makes it work. And the other thing they say about amateurs versus professionals, an amateur does it till they get it right. A professional does it till they can't get it wrong. You know, and that's not something that most people do when they're learning. And the other part of it is have fun. I want a student who wants to work hard and has a desire to get better, but is not so driven that they forget about, they're only thinking about the goal. I think that's a big problem that a lot of people have is that you don't think about the process, the steps that you want to accomplish, and they might even not be defined steps, but it's a good idea to try to have them. But having a process to work through that's going to give you and make you achieve that ultimate goal. People want to jump to that point. And it's like, I want to win. Yes, but you want to do the work that will make you win? Or how about doing the work so that not only will you win, but you'll keep winning? It won't be just a one-off thing. You'll actually get the chance to actually be at that top for a while. Because the idea of winning is very empty. It does not last long. Once you win even the biggest contest, it doesn't last long. When I won the U.S. Open and I called up my dad at that Sunday night and told him, it was amazing. But when I showed up back at work on Tuesday morning, and I worked for a construction supply company, and my driver didn't show up, so I had to do the first delivery of construction supplies to, ironically, Bank One Ballpark in Phoenix, Arizona, and I stepped out of the truck into a mud that went up to my ankle, up to my knee, and the first thing I did was look at my ring on my finger from winning the U.S. Open and go, well, that's done with. Back to the real world. Uh, didn't make any difference. It's gone as quick. So you have to think about where you want to go with it. It's not thinking about it as an end goal, but as a point in your journey. And people that think of it like that, um, and that honor and respect and continue to acknowledge how they got where they got. I think sometimes people forget the people that helped them get there. And I think that's probably one of the really frustrating things is I've had my share of students over the years who've acknowledged my impact, and others that once they got to the point that they're fulfilling what they were trying to get to, all of a sudden I wasn't even part of it. And you're like going, okay, fine. I guess that you told me how you got me, you got what you wanted and what you needed from me, and just moved on. So I'm not the one I'm not the type of teacher or pro that's going to stop my students from going anywhere. I want them to go. I want them to then bring it back to me so we can help them apply it. Because I feel in a lot of
Right.
cases I'd rather be their coach than their instructor or their pro. I'd rather be their coach, the person they come home to, and work with at home. Because then you can work with somebody on a weekly basis while they help you to build that into your dance. So I like that part a lot more. But anyway, yeah. I don't like people that dwell in the negativity zone. It's like, if you can't do it, yes, you can be frustrated with yourself, but don't get mad, don't lose it, don't get no yelling, no screaming. I've had partnerships like that, and they're no fun. Um, Positive energy and positive enjoyment, and the fact that I want to be able to enjoy and want to come back to work with you again.
Right.
Which ironically is the entire question that you asked, but but what is it that makes me? So much of it has to do with your energy and your vibe and your approach to it, and that you do the work. No, coaches don't really enjoy coming back and working on the same thing over and over again. Yeah, it is job security. Okay. Yeah, we keep getting a paycheck, but I would rather have a student that actually practices and takes some time to apply it, and say that we do every 2 weeks instead of every week. But you're going to actually practice. And then I have some students that want to do 3 or 4 hours because they're practicing nonstop. Those are the ones that are great, especially when you add a little bit of talent along with it. That's a good combination. It's not always there, but it's a good combination.
That's very true. So let's move into, do you have any other um, points of leadership and mentorship you'd like to address before we move into the person behind the dancer? Because I know you've said a
Um,
couple of times you had things you wanted to go back to, so this would be the
yeah,
opportunity to go back to those things.
yeah. I don't know. I don't necessarily remember what those were at this point. I probably should have had a notepad. But I think one of the key things that our community as dance community overall, that we really need to bring more attention to is the community teaching. Is the Everybody wants to learn how to teach, and it's no affront to the folks that are doing it, but a lot of the time that's spent when, and in a lot of cases, it is the advanced dancers, the all-star dancers that are going and taking lessons at events from the current touring pros and learning about how to teach. But I think what a lot of cases, what they're learning is they're learning how to teach for event stuff, workshops at an event, intensives at an event, private lessons at an event. And so this dance is so unique that we have a style of the dance when you start competing that's not the same as when you start just social dancing in your local community.
Yep,
And so
I
what I
agree with that.
find, there's a lot of folks that are teaching what they're doing to brand new dancers. It doesn't work. You need to
Oh,
teach
advanced
what
and
got you
all-star
there.
level technique for baby dancers. Oh,
Right. You need to have ways of. I've literally heard people say that I don't teach a weighted triple in West Coast swing because it's too hard to teach it. Well, there's 100 different ways that you can do it, and I have one that works in 3 minutes, and I do it with all of my new students. We literally start talking about basic rhythms all the time with new students, and we don't do delayed weight changes. We don't do the last minute stretch on six where everybody all the weight settles on six. A lot of those are styling variations that people are making into the fundamental of the dance. That's not the fundamental of the dance. The fundamental of the dance is very boring. If it's a stylized, and then it's not basics.
Yeah.
Vanilla, boring basics to start with, because what I want as a teacher is I want my students to be able to go, all right, here's my solid foundation. How do I want to enhance this? What style do I want to add to my foundation? Who do I want to dance like? Let me take a lesson from here, a lesson from here, not me producing a bunch of clones. I would rather produce 100 boring dancers than one all-star, because those 100 boring dancers are probably going to have a good solid base that they can go off and eventually get to be so much better and be around the dance for the next 20, 30 years, because they're able to adjust with the dance as it all changes.
There's the all-stars. Hey, all-star and burnout and gone.
Yeah, well, that's what we used to call them, falling stars.
Yeah.
But the same thing it is that there's not very much focus at events on community growth instruction. It's a lot about community. I see a lot of people getting together about how do we grow our community.
Take notes.
Great stuff. Great stuff about growing a community, but how do you teach to that community? You don't teach the basics that you learned with the laid weight changes and all that stuff to somebody who doesn't really know their left from their right yet. All you're going to do is confuse them. So keep it as simple as possible and as structured as possible, because in my head, the biggest thing that's impacting West Coast swing at the moment is everybody wants to dance outside of the box, but they're not taking the time to learn where the box is.
Mm-hmm.
So the fundamentals, everybody wants the freedom, but the fundamentals and the structure is what gives you the freedom.
Yeah.
If you don't learn the structure first, the freedom is irrelevant. And I'm known. Hello, I'm known
Yeah,
as very
sorry.
structural in my teaching. I'm very regimented at it. And here, I was worried about getting into a quiet space.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Normally they're fine. There's like somebody driving by and like the bug sprayer or something.
Oh, okay.
They just lost their minds.
Yeah, they're saving you from the UPS man.
Pretty much.
Um, yeah, I think that number one, I think it's important for newer teachers to take the time to study and learn how to teach and learn the things that help you. Some people are very, very natural teachers. Some people are
Maybe
natural
not
entertainers.
natural dancers.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that everybody says is like the joke is if you can't dance, become a teacher. If you can't teach, become an MC. If you can't MC, become a DJ. If you can't DJ, become a judge. If you can't judge, become an event director. You know, if you can't be an event director, be on the World Swing Dance Council. Whatever. I'm just picking it. But those are all stages that you go through, and then some of us have done all of that, and
Yeah.
it's just a matter of which one do you like most. And then you can let yourself kind of settle into that. But yeah, I've known a lot of people that are great teachers that are not really fabulous dancers. I've known amazing coaches that can't do the dance that they're coaching people on. My coach for the U.S. Open was a Latin dancer out of Phoenix because he knew his stuff and could really help us partnering and make the tricks and make all the stuff movement better, regardless of whether this person would probably be dancing in novice Jack and Jill, but he was coaching us with a routine that won the Open. So it was like you never know where you're going to get that influence from, and I think that's very important. It's starting to get dark. I feel like I need to turn a light on. Ooh,
Sorry, it looks like it's a fire
there we go.
truck.
New lighting
Hey, it got
scheme.
bright.
Hi. I think it's either going to be that or yeah, that made no difference. Okay. Yep. Will that work? Is it still okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
All right.
Totally fine.
Yeah. You want to rewind that question again, or just to make sure or did you want more? Or are you good with that?
I think I'm good with that.
Okay.
Sorry
All
about
right.
the interruption.
No, that's okay. Squirrel. In case the dogs
Yeah,
got
literally.
distracted by a squirrel, and I did too.
So moving into the person behind the dancer, what brings you joy outside of dance? Besides your
Um,
family.
beside my family,
Mm-hmm. I'm getting
well,
tricksy.
considering I moved to Florida because of my son. So, and that's now that he's in college, that's partially why I'm ready to kind of move on. But I love going for a ride on my motorcycle. Um, I just getting out and that's also part of the reason why why that Panhandle is so nice. It's like I'll be 10 minutes from the beach and I can just go on a beach ride as whenever I want to. Um, I have I'm new to motorcycle riding. Basically, if you look at my entire life, but I own a Can-Am Spider, which is a three-wheel motorcycle, the one that has the two wheels on the front. Well, I'll give you a picture you can post right here for this part too.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. It'd be great.
um, and it's great. It's literally when I'm sitting on top of it, I probably take up more space than one of those Fiats, those little tiny smart type cars. We're probably bigger than that, definitely taller. It has a lot of lights. It's very visible. So I'm not one of those people that disappears on the road. You know I'm coming.
Yeah,
Um,
you're very
yeah,
safety minded, so I kind of
yeah.
expected.
An extremely defensive driver, even to the point of last time I went for a ride, I was out in the villages and I realized after two, and remember the pattern thing? I realized after two people cut me off that I was like, oh, we're in the villages. This is a senior community. Their depth of field is a little bit different. There, as you get older, they don't, doesn't seem as close. So they didn't realize how close I was, and I'm getting cut off more.
Oh,
And I realized that I'm like, oh, okay, I need to expect this a little bit more, give a little bit more space because of the area I'm in. I noticed that after two people cut me off because I don't normally get cut off at all, and that's my pattern thing. Like I recognized that after the second time it happened, I'm like, okay, got to change the way I'm driving. Didn't get mad at them. I just said, all right, fine, adjust what I'm doing because I can't make everybody else change. But back to the question about what I enjoy. I love going for a ride. I love to travel. I've done a lot of solo travel, a lot of stuff where I'm going from event to event. Um, I'm not really big on the mainstream places that everybody wants to travel to because a lot of them I've been already. At 40 countries that I've traveled to, and I only have a
jeez.
couple on there, a couple that that I would be willing to pay my own money to go back to.
Fair.
So there's ones that I'd go to if I got hired to go, and I will go, immediately. But like my bucket list when I like retire, I want to go spend a month just exploring the countries around the Black Sea,
Really?
and I want to go to Portugal and Spain because I've only been to Madrid, but I haven't explored Spain very much, and I've never been to
Spain's pretty
Portugal.
cool.
Yeah, and Portugal is beautiful too, and I got friends in all those places. So
Yeah.
I want to be able to go explore some of the off the beaten path kind of places. I've already been to Paris a half a dozen times, London a dozen times, Budapest probably 2 dozen times. So there's certain places that I've been a bunch of times, and it's like there's others that I would love to go back to. And I go to Scotland every year, and I love it. I go to Edinburgh every
Oh
year,
yeah,
absolutely
I've
love
seen
it.
your picture.
Yeah, I mean that's my heritage is partially from there, so I've adopted that portion of my heritage pretty much wholeheartedly. I felt comfortable beyond expectations there the first time I went, and before my family did their heritage and found out I had that strong of a Scottish heritage. I literally have one of my ancestors that's buried at St. Giles Cathedral in the middle of Edinburgh.
Oh wow.
So I did not know that, when I first started going over there. I had no idea. And so my sister did all that and found out, and they're like, "Oh, now this explains why I love this place so much. It's where my family
So how
heritage
long
comes
did it
from."
take you to like get a kilt and a sporran and all of that?
It
Or did
was
you
a
dive head
process.
first?
No, no, no. I mean, the first time I went over there, I just did the typical party hit tilt, okay, which is like
Yeah.
$45. You just do the cheapest one. And then I went back again and I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. I'm kind of liking this. I bought one that was a little bit more up tempo. And then my sister traveled over there, did the whole family tree stuff, found out our entire family history, found out where and what clan I was in, found out, I found out my tartan pattern, all of that other stuff, and then I ended up ordering the kilt, and I had a friend of mine over there go to a secondhand stop or a thrift store and find the jacket for me and everything else, and she actually gave me the sporran that her father gave her, and he had She had no brothers.
That's cool. Yeah.
So she gave it to me. She wouldn't take it back at the end of the weekend when I borrowed it the first time. She's like, "No, you keep it. You'll use it." It's like, "I'm never going to." And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome. It's amazing." And then I went. Now it's like the last time I went, I bought like the brooch and the, I always forget what it's called, the little sword with my family crest. So I'm slowly now going from the point where everything is full on legit tartan, high level, would be accepted over there. Um, and now I'm actually getting to the point of customizing all the stuff to get even more towards my family history. And I think that one of the other things that was really funny with that, I had I went over there. We usually go out on Saturday night after a formal in Edinburgh, and we'll go out into the city. If you're in your Scottish garb, and I'll go get pictures taken in various little areas around because they're really cool backdrops and stuff like that. This is the point where you can put in another picture of me doing that. So I'll give that to you too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna have to write
um,
down like how many pictures I need from you now.
yeah, and then on the way back to the hotel, because the hotel is right on the Royal Mile, right there in Edinburgh. There's a bunch of people at a bar, a bunch of girls at a bar that are screaming at me to come over to the bar. Hey, come over here! And I'm like, finally, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. So I go over there, and they buy me a drink, and they wanted to take pictures with me dressed up as this full Scotsman. I've got the hat, the kilt, the jacket, everything, full blown out. And we start chatting, and there's like 6 girls there, right? So then they ask me this, like, ask them, so where are you guys from? They said, oh, we're from Miami. And I said, oh, I'm from Orlando. And they looked at me like, what? What do you mean
And you're all
you're not
dressed up.
Scottish? You're not from here? I'm like, no, I'm visiting from Orlando. The looks on their face was absolutely amazing. I will never forget that one. I'm like, I'm 4 hours up the road from you.
That is kind of funny. So moving into our last official question, then I'm going to move into rapid fire.
Oh,
What concerns you about the future of our dance communities? Uh-oh, you got
no, it's a
contemplative.
good question. Yeah, I've got. I mean, I'm trying to condense because
Percolate.
I have concerns about community, but then I also have concerns about the competition side of things.
Mhm.
Um, but I think probably the biggest impact, and I feel like it's getting to the point where I'm like in a shadow here. So I'm going to try to make it a little bit of an adjustment here because, especially, I think I'm doing okay with charge. I've got to get another light. There we go. At least I'm not like in a
Hey,
shadow.
there's your face.
Hey, there we are. Now I look like even more like eerie. Like, we'll stay up here and do the conversation
Mm.
like this. So it should be going. I feel like I should be starting to do a Queen solo. Where's Freddie Mercury when you need him?
I know, right?
All right. Yeah. Okay. Um, I think I've kind of touched on some of the primary concerns already. Number one, it's just the idea of losing the fundamental and losing. I mean, the fact everybody wants to dance outside of the box, but nobody's taking the time to learn where the box is. And it's not something that's new, but it's just gotten to the point where um, the way that I've looked at the dance over the years, and because I've been privileged enough to actually experience the changes and the different little influences, is I've described it as like a tree. So you have this tree that is West Coast swing, and as this tree has grown up, you've had a few branches that started to come off of it. You had going back for myself, the first influence would have been hustle, so it was swustle, and then that branch grew up for a while, and then it broke off, and then it kind of came back, and then it started to grow again, and then the next branch that went off was swag. So shag influence, so it was swag, and then same thing, and it broke off, and it came back, and then you had zouk, and then you had tango, and then you had, there's so many different ones, but each one has had a small influence, and that branch after a while would break off, and you would kind of have a reset. And interestingly enough, what happened with the reset was very often, whether designed like that or not, I have no idea, and I really don't care, happened at the U.S. Open. Sometimes you would see where it was like seemed like a pushback. Like the year that I won, there was a push of let's get more traditional in the dance. It's gone too much to hustle. And I happened to have put on the floor that year a very blues routine that was very classic style, but did it in showcase. But it was definitely West Coast swing. It was very traditional style West Coast swing. And we won with it. And partially because that was the vibe at that point in time that we didn't want the dance to get too far away from where it came from. Now, I'm not saying that I don't know, that might have been natural all this time. There also could have been outside forces that I was not aware of, and I'm not even going to speculate there. But I think what's happened right now is we have this kind of what sometimes people call couples contact improv, whatever kind of thing you want to call what the dance is doing now, where it's being much over, and even having events like I was at Crossflow. Fabulous a concept. I love the idea. But what I loved about it was that there was a statement in there about don't lose the roots. So I think what's happening is a lot of us were losing the roots of the dance. And what happens when everybody is pushing off to this sidebar and now they're teaching the variation as the basic. And I'm literally having students that I overhear say, oh, that's wrong. We don't do it that way anymore. I was like, that's not true. They don't do it that way in that style, but everybody else does. And if you dance with anybody that's been doing West Coast swing longer than 10 years, we all still do it that way. We just adjust according to who we're dancing with. And so what has happened is, and this is one of the things that I think losing Skippy Blair has had an effect on our dance. And this is something that's just kind of realized in my head right now, is that she was always the type that would push things back to the fundamental and remember, and she taught what we call a school book figure, which is what you did that was non-adjusted. And then what happens, though, is that people learn the adjusted pattern. And I've literally had a student tell me that we don't teach it this way. And I asked who their teacher was, and they told me. And I was like, well, I know who her leader is, and I know who she does, because he leads this way, she dances this way. So she's teaching the pattern that was adjusted because of her partner as the basic. And you're teaching an adjusted basic to new dancers, and not giving them a chance to actually go to the fundamental baseline to then learn it and make their own adjustments as they want to with their own style. And I think that's a very quick blast nutshell kind of thing. That's not helping our dance. And the other big worry I have is, and I'm seeing a lot of it, and I understand where it's coming from, but one of the traditional feelings that was core to West Coast swing was a sustained connection anchor. So that's why we called it anchor in place, because on 5 and 6, you anchored in place. It was not 5 and stretch, where we anchor on 6. And there's a lot of that happening right now. And what I see happening as a judge a lot in the newer levels is almost everybody's off time, because the newer dancers, when they're learning that immediate, like, it's not just a stretch on 6, it's literally a settle on 6. Everything happens connection-wise. The leaders are not moving away from the connection when they settle. They're bringing it with them. So the follower feels a pull on 6 while they're trying to do a delayed weight change. So you have an early lead and a late follow that's trying to dance together. And that combination of the two is making for a lot of off-time dancing and lost connections. So there's not a lot of, that's hurting. It's hurting the timing of the lower dancers, and I worry that it also can have an opportunity to injure some of the followers, because they're being led before their weight commitment is happening, and that can, with newer dancers, can really hurt it. But I don't think that we need to rename the dance. I don't think we need to change it. I think that there's an opportunity for us to still honor the style that's been here and has given us this fundamentals, to the point where I even teach a traveling anchor in my classes now as a variation, but it's not your basic dance. Learn the anchor, because you don't know how much room you have. People learn to have, I wrote a few articles a few years back, and one of the comments that I got from a student that was kind of telling me what happened to her is that she asked her partner to dance smaller because it was too crowded on the dance floor. And he said, I don't know how to dance small. This is how I learned to dance for competition. So we're not learning how to dance socially first and then taking that on the competition floor. We're first off learning how to dance for competition, and that's not good.
Well,
That's
you definitely given
that's
me some things to think about.
And then the other thing that's a worry is just the idea of our local teachers that are coming off the circuit and starting to teach locally that aren't going back to the fundamentals to teach at a local level. We will always need the local feeder communities that eventually people become interested. They go to a local event, then they travel to an event, and all of a sudden now they're going wherever else. So that's a big point of source for our growth. But we have to realize that 90% of the people that dance West Coast Swing will never leave their local community. Obviously, that's a guess, but statistically, I think it's a safe approximation.
Yeah,
They
I
might
think
go
you're
to a
right.
local event. If you want to progress the numbers, you could have, maybe 75% of the dancers will go to local events. 90% will go to a local workshop, but not a full-on event. Now I'm thinking about 10% won't go to any, then 25% won't travel beyond the local, 50% won't leave the city, 75% won't leave the state, 90%
Mm-hmm.
won't leave your region and go to a different out-of-state or different region or a different country. So you're dealing with such a small percentage. And if you really want to scare the hell out of a lot of people, realize how important it is to keep the people that didn't place happy. Because if you got 100 people in a contest and all they do is place the top 5, that means 95% of your dancers aren't happy because they didn't place in the top 5.
So what do you do? Have more competitions?
No.
I mean, that's
Um,
statistics. That increases your statistics of them winning somewhere else, right?
well, I mean, I guess so, but it depends on if you reset that number. But yeah, I mean, if they, I'm not gonna go there. That's just something
I
that could get
know.
too dangerous. Um,
Sorry.
but I mean, they've talked a lot about certain changes and stuff, and I wish they would stop messing with the champions because it's getting really frustrated. Uh, you know, I've been literally in the champions division since 1990 something, and when they did the change a couple years ago, I got pushed out of there, and I had to petition to dance in All Stars, and now I'm not allowed to dance in All Stars because I'm back in champions. But now they're talking about changing the rules again. So where is that going to put me? It's like this going back and forth, and it's frustrating. We'll see what happens. Who knows?
Invitational. That's what it's called.
Yeah, well, I mean, but that also gets to be kind of interesting because sometimes you have invitationals that are very regional, and then you have invitations that are national,
True.
and you have some events that have done their really best and they've done a great job of honoring where the dances come from, but that becomes more and more difficult. How do you do that while also honoring where it's going? It's
Yeah,
not an easy
that's
thing
true.
to do.
We should chat sometime offline about that. So moving into our rapid fire. So this is kind of like it's like maybe up to a sentence, and then I've got my last question.
Rapid fire sounds like
So
a dating app, but okay, go ahead.
yeah, kind of is. Not leading you on, Gary. So
Yeah.
coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee every day, 10,000 times on Sunday. Very
Beach
strong
or
and very
mountains?
often. Beach or mountains?
Yeah.
Well, honestly, it depends on the season. I used to go skiing all the time. I don't do it as much, but I definitely do love the beach. I love the tropicals. I'd rather not wear layers of clothing. So I would much rather prefer the beach. As I'm moving to one of the most beautiful beaches in the entire country.
But yeah, obviously. Morning or night?
Oh, I'm a weirdo. I can switch. As a dancer, you have to be a night owl, especially if you're
It's
doing
true.
events. But I used to dance until dawn on Monday morning, and then I'd be off on Monday. By the time Monday hit, I'm up at 5 a.m. to go to work on Monday or on Tuesday.
Oh, I
So
can do
in
that in my
24 hours, I
20s.
would switch the other way. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. But I tend to, for work, like to get up early, and I like to have that slow start with quiet time.
Hmm.
My last relationship, I always got in trouble because I never woke her up in the morning, and I'm like, that's because I want my quiet time. I don't want to have to talk to anybody. I don't want to interact. I get so much done during that time of my day. Right now, I'm kind of like filling in a few gaps where every once in a while doing stuff like Uber, and I'm up doing Uber runs at 3 a.m. taking people to the airport when there's not one person on the freeway. It's great. But I always have liked that where I'll get up in the morning, get my coffee, sit down at my desk, and work for 2 hours and get so much done before everybody else starts. Um, but I also will do an overnight. I mean, I jokingly say we should have this thing called, instead of just Breakfast Club, we should have Spartan Breakfast Club, where you have to do it 4 nights in a row on a 4-day event. You have to make it to Breakfast Club every day. And I've done
That's
that like 4 or 5 times,
oy.
but I did it while I was chief judge also
Oh,
two
that
or three
makes
times.
sense. I was like,
That
were you
was rough.
event directing? That
No,
would make
no, no.
sense too.
I was chief judge, but I stayed up until breakfast, and I didn't like go to bed and take a nap and get back up later. I literally stayed up until 7 a.m., went to breakfast, went to bed until noon, came back and started running contests and teaching classes, and then danced. Did the same thing all over again. But that Spartan Breakfast Club would be 4 nights in a row. But that's, I mean, so I love that late night dancing and that chill vibe of everything, and I don't like anything more as far as a dancer. I like that more than anything else. So I do have this kind of strange ability to switch back and forth. But either way, I've got to have my coffee.
Absolutely. So, favorite movie?
I know this is going to sound really corny, but it's going to be Dirty Dancing. I could watch that
Seriously?
movie all the time. Yeah, I absolutely love it. I liked it when I was a kid, and I've really loved the more interviews I see, and the more I find out about Patrick Swayze and how his approach was to partnering and everything else. I love the interviews with his wife. Um,
Oh yeah, the dance interviews. Yeah.
and I mean, I liked him as an actor, but I mean, I loved Roadhouse too, but that's a different story. Um, I've always been kind of that my thing is that I'm like the quiet kind of person, um, that it doesn't have to be the center of attention, but I'll take over and fix things and run things if I need to. Um, I'm not the one to start fights, but I'm usually the one to finish them and end them. Um, I don't I don't get involved in stuff like that. It's just, I mean, I remember the U.S. Open one year. Jack Smith is on the microphone at the DJ, and he calls Jim, Mark, Gary to the DJ booth. It's Jim Minty, Mark Scheifele, and me. Shortest one of us is Mark Scheifele at 6'3".
Yeah.
I'm 6'5". Jim Minty is 6'7", 6'8".
Yeah.
And it
He's a
turns
trip.
out we were in Anaheim and at the U.S. Open, and some people had come in for one of the bowl games from one of the college teams, had come into the ballroom and were harassing people. And basically, we had to go out and tell them to leave. And Jack was the one that walked up to the guys while the three of us were standing behind him with our arms crossed, just looking at him. And the guy's like, I ain't leaving. And then he looks up behind Jack and he goes, oh, yeah, we're going to go now. So they all left. But it's the type that sits back and goes, yeah, you don't want this. You don't want to mess with this. The smartest move would be to leave. I'm the quiet guy that doesn't have to be involved in the middle of everything. And I'm
Was
okay
Jim
with that.
already like
Oh, yeah,
had
yeah,
his cue ball
yeah,
going?
yeah.
Yeah.
But Mark wasn't. Yeah.
Mark was it?
So I'm the one that still has it.
Yeah, you still got your hair. He's showing off over there.
Yeah.
What's one song that always makes you smile?
Oh, it's just so wrong. But it's accurate. One of the songs that always makes me smile. Um, Paul Newman, Randy Newman. Sorry, Randy Newman. Um, Short people got no reason. It does. It always makes me smile.
I can see why.
Yeah.
Um, what's one thing people always get wrong about you?
They all think I'm serious. I take my job very seriously when I'm out there judging. I also feel like, um, as a judge, we it shouldn't be possible for somebody to watch our reactions and know our scores based upon watching how we react. So as a judge, I either have to smile for everyone, clap for everyone, or smile for no one and clap for no one.
So you can't give the Angel Figueroa.
Yeah, I don't. It's like it's
I'm sorry,
straight
I loved
line.
Angel. He was
Oh
great.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. He was a freak of nature and absolutely the most amazing guy.
But
Um,
you knew if you were off time.
oh yeah, yeah. You I would love to play poker with that guy.
Oh gosh.
He would. I would take every penny he had, because that's one of the other things that I love doing. I love to play poker, tournament poker. Um, yeah. Anyway, so you totally lost my train of thought on this. What they don't know about me,
Sorry.
most people, until they actually meet me, think that I'm a very, very serious person. And once you actually get to know me, and all of my students in Orlando and all of my friends in Orlando would all say this, is like, they all know that the minute I stop giving them a hard time, it's probably because I don't like them. Or if I don't give them a hard time, I either don't know them or I don't like them. I'm the kind of, I'll give the extra little rib or twist or playful, smart ass kind of comment. And I literally, I don't know where it was. I had somebody that walked up to me this weekend and they were talking to me and they said, I met you at such and such. We were literally, we were at Trilogy waiting in line for the taco truck. She said, that's where I met you. And the one thing that shocked me is you were freaking hilarious. You were cracking jokes every on point dad jokes and everything else. Just you had the entire line just absolutely busting up. So they didn't know that I was funny, and I was like, well, I mean, I guess I must have been on a roll, because I have a sense of humor and I have, I guess, decent timing, but I like to play and make jokes, but I also take my job seriously. So, but I also like to make, that's like the joke about walking up to the Masters, when I'm running a contest and they're lined up and I go, just, a month before I compete in Masters, go old people. That's kind of my,
Okay, so
it's
you
not mean,
already
but
have a rapport with that competitive group of people
yeah,
too, and
yeah, true. So yeah,
it's
so
not
it's
like
not
walking up
something,
to a bunch of newcomers and being like,
yeah, yep.
messing with them.
Yeah, I mean, God, I did that this past weekend. I'm running to go use the bathroom, but the newcomers are all lined up. I'm like, fine, I'm out of here. I'm done with you guys. And so he says, oh no, you have a tablet in your hand. You can't leave.
You gotta
Some
come
of them
back.
thought I was actually leaving.
They start panicking. Oh, that's so mean. So, my very last question, so you can get off and get dancing, and I'll do my recap at the end.
Okay, you
Um,
haven't finished
after
rapid
you're,
fire.
huh?
You haven't finished rapid fire, have you?
Well, I mean, like, I've been kind of scooting along because I'm not trying to keep
Okay,
you on here for two
that's
hours.
all right. You want to ask me a few more of those rapid fire questions?
Sure. What's your favorite competition city?
I don't really have one. I don't.
Really?
I think if I did, it would probably have to be Charlotte, just because it's where it was an event that I helped found the event. So I love the flavor behind the competitions, the energy, and everything that happens there, and the fact that it's such a socially driven event. It's not all about routines. It's about social competitions, not um, the real intense side of stuff.
It was pretty cool. I was
Yeah,
there for like the year before it was Charlotte Westie Fest, and then the year it
yeah,
was Charlotte Westie Fest. It was
yeah,
a pretty cool thing to see it kind of grow and
yeah,
develop and seeing everything that you're doing with that.
yeah.
Well,
That was a
gosh,
lot of fun.
what was the event that it was with before?
Doesn't
Was it?
matter. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
It's no need.
I can't even remember.
That's a good. That's a.
Um,
You don't want to. We're good on that.
so did we go over favorite music artist yet?
No. If I had to pick one, I would probably end up going back into my music fan days and pick like uh, The Doors, Jimi Hendrix, Van Halen, Led Zeppelin. It would be all '80s rock. I have a rock and roll playlist on my uh, phone or on Spotify that I play every time I go out on a ride on my motorcycle. Um, yeah. So I mean, it would probably be that. It wouldn't be any particular individual artist.
Okay. I mean, I totally get that. I've got my list of like punk Irish music and like some 80s ballads. So I
Yeah,
feel
my
ya.
most popular routine, most popular routine would be routine song or performer would be Michael Bublé. I've done more routines to Michael Bublé than everybody else combined. Just that jazzy, fluid style really fit my style of movement, so that was why I kind of stuck with that. But
I love Michael Bublé. So that was all of our rapid fire. questions.
Okay.
Was there any other questions that you were just dying to hit?
Single. Um, Not that that's relevant. Um, well, I think that one of the things that's really, really difficult in this community, that's been a struggle for a lot of people, and I've been in the dance community for over 35 years. Um, some might call me either not chronically single, but I forget what's the word. There's a kind of sarcastic claim for it, but the serial monogamist kind of thing. But
Nothing wrong with that.
exactly, I mean, and I there's a lot of exes that are in the dance community that, and we, for the most part, get along fine because it's been a long time. So I have friends that have given me a hard time for the fact that, well, you have a whole bunch of exes here. I'm like, 35 years. Come on now. It's not like they were all in the last 5 years like some people. Um,
Amen.
it's a very difficult thing, and especially with what's happened in our world, and the awareness that's come about, that I think is very important. Um, I think I think the standard needs to be raised, especially for male professionals in our dance community. Um, I hear more stories about inappropriate, um, not necessarily actions, but inappropriate conversations, and it's from people that are either wanting to or on their way to becoming more influential in the community and have the opportunity to do so, and it scares me. Um, I
Because
go
they're in
out
a
of my
position of trust as a teacher and
as a
influencer.
teacher or as somebody who is working their way up in the community, and so they have a certain level of respect, and then I have friends in the community are and would be friends outside of the dance community, and so I end up hearing from them as to the conversations that happen, and the messages that they receive, and um, it's I think that honestly myself, I put more effort into making sure that I don't ever make somebody feel uncomfortable, and to my own detriment, honestly, and I'm okay with that. Um, and it's difficult when you are a single male in a community like this, because the first thing when you're on a dating app and somebody finds out you're a dance instructor, like, why are you here? You're a dance instructor. You have your pick of all the women. It's like, not if I want to keep my career, I don't. And you don't get
It's
a
true.
35-year dance career by sleeping with your students. You don't get them by being inappropriate in how
No.
you are with your students. I know that because I've been doing it as long as I have, and I literally used to teach a class called Mars and Venus on the Dance Floor, making the best of a 3-minute relationship, that I have a lot of kind of innuendo type jokes in my class. I try never to cross a line, but other than that, I stay very, very respectful. And it's something that takes effort, and it takes it needs to be more prevalent, because all we do is hear about the ones that are not like that, and a little bit too much. And maybe it's just because of recent things that have happened around some of my friends, where they become unexpectedly single. So all of a sudden, I'm hearing stories from them, and it concerns me. And when I say that, these are females that are dancers in the community, but they're being approached by the pros in the community, and I'm not happy with that. And I'm not doing anything like illegal or crossing the line yet, but it's still stuff that should be
Yeah, I
more.
mean, when you're in like a position of power, because you're a teacher, you have people that are susceptible to influence.
Yeah,
It is what it is,
yeah,
and you have to be very careful not to hurt those people that are trusting you to basically caretake them,
yeah. I
like
think we
take
should
care of
have
them during their journey.
that. Um, what's it? The Hippocratic oath, like the doctors have: do no
Oh
harm.
gosh, that would, well,
It should be part of
yeah.
it.
I'm a
Um,
community leader. I'm gonna do this
yeah.
talk.
Well, I honestly,
It's like,
kind of feel like Like, and it's taking it to an extreme, and I know that, and I think that's important that I did that because I think it's made me be even more careful, and I wish I didn't have to be, but I'm glad I do. That sounds really strange. Um,
It's not just for like leads or guys. Like it can
no,
be a
no,
thing
it
for
can.
women too
Oh yeah,
that could
absolutely,
be
absolutely.
aggressors.
Yeah. Um, I don't generally have that happen myself, but also
Aggressive women.
I'm not like a 5'2" guy, but not that that matters. But you know, a 6'5", 275 pound dude is not going to be the person that most women are aggressive with.
I
But
don't know, maybe.
maybe, um, but it's kind of weird. But it's kind of like I've been more, and I've been hung up on kind of the same approach. And this is probably the first time I put this out in a public kind of genre. Is I kind of feel like there's such an opportunity to basically get yourself into trouble where I ask somebody out where I'm very, very blatant about, hey, I would love to take you out for dinner. I'd like to go on a date with you. And they say no. And it's like, oh, okay, no problem. But then 6 months down the line, they don't think I'm judging them fairly. And all of a sudden I get, accused of
Um,
being unfair in my judging because say that so-and-so said no when I asked them out on a date. And it's like, I could see that happening. I've seen much, much worse and had to be the chief judge kind of figuring out how to work around things or to maneuver things to make sure that situations were handled properly because in a lot of cases they weren't. Um, but that's kind of been this thing. And I haven't seen it happen. It hasn't happened to me, but it would be like one of those things that I could see happening. And
mm,
unfortunately, in some cases, it was probably accurate. In some cases, that type of stuff does happen. And that's what scares me. And that's what I think is happening too often. Because to me, I literally have a friend of mine who had an abusive boyfriend who he knew I knew, and I had to judge him in a contest that night. And when he went back to the room, his girlfriend was like, oh, this is interesting. So Gary judged you. And she's been a friend of mine forever. And he thought I was going to score him horribly. And I put him in first place because he deserved it. I would just as soon knock him out than put him in first place. But I put him in first place because he had the best dance on the floor. So that's not always an approach that people they. I think I'm going to take this whole thing back to something that I always said when I was doing judges training is that if you think you don't have biases, you shouldn't be judging because everyone has biases. As a judge, you need to understand what your biases are so that you can minimize their impact because you're going to have them regardless. It's just a matter of how much you let them impact what you're doing as a judge. So if you can have all the biases in the world, but if you go, okay, I'm aware of this biases, that's not going to affect me. That one's not. That one's not. That one's not. And you eliminate all those biases, then guess what? You're a good judge because not only do you acknowledge them, but you do your best to minimize their impact.
right. So
So I
if you
think
know you've
anybody
got
that's
somebody that's biased or there's some type of bias in a division, do you recuse their scores, or if something comes up, or do you just not schedule them for
well,
that
to a
division?
certain degree, it's any type of bias or conflict supposed to be exposed to us early.
Right.
We're supposed to be, they should let us know as soon as possible so that we can eliminate that. And even now, World Swing Dance Council in their guidance for judges has put out more and more limitations to eliminate the perception of bias because I think that's one of the things that I tell people all the time in the community is like um, when I say their meaning the competitor or the attendee, their perception is our reality. It doesn't matter what the truth is. It matters what they perceive as is happening. So you either need to be really clear about what's happening to eliminate that perception, or you need to eliminate it in its entirety. Even though, as an example, I can imagine the World Swing Dance Council gets complaints all the time about somebody judging their significant other or their child or whatever in a dance event, but they don't even take the time to look and realize that that person wasn't even judging. Like my son happens to be in a Jack and Jill contest, and I'm judging, not chief judge, but I'm judging. Well,
Your
I'm not judging the leaders.
followers.
I'm judging followers. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to be judging followers. But they see that I'm on the floor and immediately assume.
Yeah.
No, but that's the kind of complaint that happens. So that's the whole perception thing. Some things are almost impossible to eliminate, and so you have to be ready to have the answers. And so
Yeah, because there's
you
not
are
an infinite number of judges.
exactly, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, so
Episode is brought to you by Klein's Cabinets, supporting all of your handyman needs. Rocket Westies. Get your dance on every Tuesday night at the Beer Hog in Madison, Alabama. Rocket City Swing, the hometown West Coast swing event in the Rocket City. The Mob Mobile West Coast Swing. And Swingapalooza, the Westie Party in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.